Somewhere in the oldest medical literature ever written, there is a list. Not a pharmaceutical index. Not a supplement catalog. A list of foods. Foods that common people grew, traded, cooked, and ate thousands of years before modern medicine existed. And here is the thing that researchers keep discovering quietly in peer-reviewed journals that rarely make headlines. These foods work. Not metaphorically. Not anecdotally. Biochemically. The compounds inside them target inflammation pathways, regulate blood sugar, protect neural tissue, and fight infection with a specificity that continues to surprise scientists who study them. The ancient world did not have laboratories, but they had something we tend to underestimate: thousands of years of careful observation. When a food kept showing up in sacred texts, in trade routes, in royal medicine chests, in fasting protocols, it was not because of tradition alone. It was because generation after generation had watched what it did to the human body. This is not about religion. This is about nutrition, biology, and the quiet wisdom encoded in foods that predate every modern diet trend by millennia. Here are 12 of them. Number 1. Pomegranate. The pomegranate appears in the Hebrew Bible as one of the 7 species of the Promised Land. It was etched into the pillars of Solomon's temple. Priests wore its image on their garments. That level of cultural significance does not emerge from aesthetics alone. Inside each pomegranate is a compound called punicalagin. It is one of the most potent antioxidants ever measured in a natural food, with an antioxidant capacity that outperforms red wine and green tea by a wide margin. The body converts punicalagin into urolithins, molecules that researchers now link to cellular cleanup processes, particularly mitophagy, the recycling of damaged mitochondria. Clinical trials have examined pomegranate juice in men with prostate cancer and found it significantly slowed the rise of PSA levels. Separate research has connected regular consumption to reduced arterial plaque buildup and lower systolic blood pressure. One study measured arterial stiffness before and after 3 months of daily pomegranate juice and found measurable improvement in arterial flexibility. This is a fruit that ancient peoples reserved for moments of ceremony and covenant. Modern science is beginning to understand why they treated it with that kind of reverence. Number 2. Figs. Figs appear throughout the Old and New Testament in ways that signal more than symbolism. In the second book of Kings, the prophet Isaiah instructs that a poultice of figs be pressed onto King Hezekiah's infected wound. He recovers. That prescription is not a miracle. It is medicine. Figs contain phycin, a proteolytic enzyme, along with benzaldehyde, a compound that has been studied for its ability to inhibit tumor cell proliferation. They are extraordinarily rich in soluble fiber, particularly pectin, which binds cholesterol in the digestive tract and pulls it out of the body before absorption. A single dried fig delivers meaningful amounts of calcium, potassium, and magnesium. Populations that maintained high fig consumption historically tended to have diets that supported cardiovascular and bone health. Not because of any single compound, but because the overall nutritional density was simply remarkable. And the fiber content. Figs have one of the highest fiber concentrations of any commonly eaten fruit. The effect on gut microbiome diversity is significant. A well-fed microbiome regulates immune function, mental health, and metabolic efficiency in ways researchers are still mapping. What Isaiah prescribed for a wound, the gut researchers are now recommending for chronic disease prevention. Number 3. Olive oil. This one requires little introduction, but the depth behind it deserves more than the surface-level conversation we usually have about it. The olive tree is mentioned more than any other plant in the Bible. Olive oil was used for anointing, for lamps, for cooking, for healing. It was not a condiment. It was infrastructure. The primary fatty acid in olive oil is oleic acid, a monounsaturated fat that reduces LDL oxidation, which is the process that makes cholesterol dangerous rather than simply present. But the more interesting compounds are the polyphenol, particularly oleocanthal, which functions as a natural anti-inflammatory agent. Its mechanism of action closely mirrors ibuprofen. Researchers at the Manel Chemical Senses Center identified this when they noticed that fresh, high-quality olive oil produces the same throat sting as ibuprofen. The PRODIME trial, one of the largest cardiovascular nutrition studies ever conducted, found that a Mediterranean diet supplemented with extra virgin olive oil reduced major cardiovascular events by 30% compared to a low-fat control diet. 30%. That is a number pharmaceutical companies spend billions trying to achieve. Cold-pressed extra virgin. The processing matters. Refined olive oils lose most of the polyphenol content. The ancient world pressed theirs immediately and stored it carefully. They were protecting exactly what makes it medicinal. Number 4. Garlic. When the Israelites left Egypt and wandered the desert, one of the things they mourned leaving behind was garlic. That is mentioned explicitly in the Book of Numbers. People in the grip of a grueling journey through harsh terrain were homesick for a food. That detail is telling. Garlic's medicinal properties center on a compound called allicin, which forms only when raw garlic is crushed or chopped and the enzyme alliinase comes into contact with alliin. The resulting molecule has documented antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral properties. Meta-analyses examining garlic supplementation consistently show reductions in total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and blood pressure in hypertensive patients. The effect on systolic blood pressure in some studies is comparable to low-dose medication. Research published in the Journal of Nutrition found that aged garlic extract reduced the progression of coronary artery calcification in patients already on statin therapy. The ancient Egyptians fed garlic to pyramid laborers to maintain their strength and prevent illness. It was found in Tutankhamun's tomb. It was prescribed in the Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest medical texts on Earth, for over 22 different conditions. They did not know what allicin was. They knew what garlic did. Number 5. Honey. Raw honey. Not the processed, heated, filtered product sold in most grocery stores, but the raw version that humans have been harvesting since before recorded history. The Bible references honey more than 60 times. The Promised Land itself is described as flowing with it. That repetition is not poetic excess. Honey was medicine, preservative, energy source, and trade commodity simultaneously. Raw honey contains hydrogen peroxide, which forms naturally as bees produce it, and it also contains defensin-1, an antimicrobial peptide that bees add from their own immune systems. The pH of honey is between 3 and 4, which is acidic enough to kill most pathogenic bacteria. Its low water activity prevents microbial growth entirely. The WHO has recognized honey as a valid treatment for upper respiratory infections, particularly in children, with evidence showing it outperforms dextromethorphan, the active ingredient in most over-the-counter cough suppressants. Clinical wound care now uses medical-grade Manuka honey for antibiotic-resistant infections, including MRSA. That is not alternative medicine. That is infection wards in major hospitals. The key, again, is processing. Heat destroys the enzymes and much of the antimicrobial activity. Raw, unfiltered honey retains what the hive produced. The ancients ate it straight from the comb. That was not primitive. That was optimal. If you are finding this valuable, consider subscribing. Every week this channel explores the intersection of ancient knowledge and modern science. And what we are discovering is that the gap between them is far smaller than most people think. Number 6. Lentils. In Genesis, Esau famously trades his birthright for a bowl of lentil stew. Scholars debate the theology. Nutritionists look at that story and see something else entirely. This was a food worth trading a legacy for. Lentils are one of the oldest cultivated crops on Earth, with evidence of consumption dating back 12,000 years in the Near East. They are extraordinarily protein-dense for a plant food, roughly 18 grams per cooked cup, and they deliver that protein alongside a fiber content that produces one of the lowest glycemic responses of any carbohydrate-containing food. The resistant starch in lentils feeds lactobacillus and bifidobacterium species in the colon, producing short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which reduces intestinal inflammation and may protect against colorectal cancer. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that regular legume consumption was associated with a 42% lower risk of coronary heart disease. They were portable, shelf-stable, filling, and healing. Every army in the ancient Near East carried them. Every monastery included them in the communal diet. That was not coincidence. That was collective nutritional intelligence accumulated over thousands of years. Number 7. Cumin. This spice appears in both Isaiah and Matthew, mentioned specifically in the context of tithing, which means it carried enough economic value to be used as currency. You do not tithe things that are interchangeable. You tithe things that matter. Cumin contains thymoquinone and cuminaldehyde, compounds with documented anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial activity. Research on cumin extract has shown improved glycemic control in type 2 diabetic patients, with reductions in fasting blood glucose and HbA1c levels comparable to some pharmaceutical interventions in pilot studies. It also stimulates the secretion of pancreatic enzymes that improve the digestion and absorption of nutrients. In traditional medicine systems from the ancient Middle East through South Asia, cumin was prescribed specifically for digestive complaints, gas, bloating, and intestinal inflammation. Modern research is confirming what spice traders and physicians in the ancient world already understood. This is not a background flavoring. It is a bioactive ingredient. Number 8. Grapes and wine. Paul advises Timothy in his first letter to take a little wine for his stomach and his frequent infirmities. That instruction is specific. It is not a social endorsement. It is a medical recommendation. Grapes, and particularly their skins, contain resveratrol, a polyphenol produced by the vine as a defense against fungal infection. In the human body, resveratrol activates sirtuins, a class of proteins associated with longevity pathways, DNA repair, and mitochondrial function. Beyond resveratrol, grapes are rich in quercetin and catechins. The flavonoid content of dark grapes has been studied extensively for cardiovascular protection, with research showing reduced platelet aggregation, lower blood pressure, and improved endothelial function. Fresh grapes, raisins, and grape leaves all appear throughout biblical texts as foods for travelers, laborers, and the sick. The antimicrobial properties of fermented grape products were understood empirically long before germ theory. Diluted wine was safer than water in an ancient world without sanitation. That was not cultural habit. That was survival medicine. Number 9. Coriander. When the Israelites first encounter manna in the wilderness, the text in Exodus describes it in one specific way. It was white like coriander seed. That comparison tells us something important. Coriander was common enough, recognizable enough, that every reader would immediately understand it. Coriander contains linalool, a terpene alcohol with documented anxiolytic properties. Animal studies have shown that linalool inhalation and consumption produce measurable reductions in stress behavior, comparable in some experiments to diazepam, without the sedation. The seeds also contain compounds that have been studied for their blood sugar lowering effects, specifically by stimulating insulin secretion from beta cells. Research in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology found that coriander seed extract reduced postprandial blood glucose levels in animal models. Traditionally, coriander was used throughout the ancient Near East for digestive discomfort, anxiety, and as a mild diuretic. The overlap between what ancient practitioners observed and what biochemists are now measuring is becoming difficult to dismiss. Number 10. Bitter herbs. The Passover Seder includes bitter herbs as a mandatory element, most commonly horseradish or romaine lettuce in its bitter form. The instruction in Exodus is precise. Eat them. Do not substitute something more palatable. Bitter herbs trigger what is called the cephalic phase digestive response. The moment bitterness registers on the tongue, the vagus nerve signals the stomach to begin producing hydrochloric acid, the gallbladder to prepare bile, and the pancreas to prime digestive enzyme secretion. The entire digestive system goes on alert. This matters enormously. Low stomach acid, a condition that becomes increasingly common with age, leads to poor protein digestion, nutrient malabsorption, and bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine. Bitter herbs counteract this directly before food even arrives in the stomach. Horseradish specifically contains glucosinolates, compounds that convert to isothiocyanates in the body, which have been extensively studied for their anti-cancer properties. They upregulate detoxification enzymes in the liver and have been shown to inhibit the proliferation of several cancer cell lines in vitro. The ritual of bitterness at the table was medicine by design. Number 11. Flaxseed. Linen, which comes from the flax plant, is one of the most frequently mentioned textiles in the Bible. What receives less attention is that the same plant produces one of the most nutritionally significant seeds in ancient agriculture. Flaxseed contains the highest concentration of alpha-linolenic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid, of any plant food. It is also the richest dietary source of lignans, polyphenolic compounds that function as phytoestrogens and have been studied for their role in hormone-related cancer prevention. Research from the University of Toronto found that daily flaxseed consumption significantly reduced tumor growth markers in women with breast cancer during the period between diagnosis and surgery. Additional studies have found consistent reductions in LDL cholesterol and inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein with regular flaxseed intake. The fiber content, particularly mucilage fiber, creates a gel in the digestive tract that slows glucose absorption, feeds beneficial bacteria, and improves bowel transit time. This was a seed grown for cloth and consumed for health simultaneously. It served both purposes with equal effectiveness. Number 12. Hyssop. Hyssop is perhaps the most spiritually loaded plant in the entire Bible. It appears at the Passover, at the crucifixion, and throughout the Psalms. David writes, "Cleanse me with hyssop, and I shall be clean." That line has been interpreted theologically for centuries. But hyssop is also a real plant with real biochemistry. The primary bioactive compounds in hyssop are pinocamphone and isopinocamphone, along with rosmarinic acid and flavonoids including diosmin and hesperidin. These compounds have documented expectorant properties, meaning they help clear mucus from the respiratory tract. Hyssop tea was used throughout the ancient world for coughs, bronchitis, and chest congestion. Modern research on rosmarinic acid, found in hyssop and several related plants, shows anti-inflammatory and antiviral activity. Studies have examined it in the context of seasonal allergies, asthma, and rheumatoid arthritis with promising results. Hyssop was used in ancient purification rituals. It was used to sprinkle cleansing water. Whether or not you read any spiritual meaning into that, consider this. In a world without germ theory, choosing a plant with genuine antimicrobial properties to serve as the instrument of ritual cleansing was not arbitrary. Someone somewhere over many generations noticed what this plant did, and they encoded that knowledge into ceremony so it would never be forgotten. Before we close, if you have been watching this far, you already understand that what we call ancient wisdom and what we call modern nutritional science are pointing at the same things from opposite directions. The research does not end here. If you want to go deeper on any of these foods, including the clinical studies behind them and practical ways to incorporate them, subscribe and leave a comment with the one that surprised you most. That tells me where to take this channel next. What should we take from all of this? Not that modern medicine should be replaced by a biblical diet. That would be a misreading of everything presented here. What the evidence suggests is something quieter and more interesting. That human beings, long before they had the tools to analyze what they were eating, were remarkably accurate about which foods kept them alive, strong, and well. They embedded that knowledge in culture, in ritual, in trade, in text, because they understood intuitively that knowledge this important cannot be left to individual memory. Every food on this list was preserved across thousands of years not because of superstition, but because it worked. Generation after generation watched what happened when people ate these things. They watched what happened when they did not. We live in an era of nutritional abundance and chronic disease simultaneously. The intersection of those two facts deserves serious attention. And sometimes the most productive direction to look is backward.